Tell me about the scent of the candle. How did the candle come about?
So again, it was just something that wasn't around. I think a lot of our products, we solve problems that we have, and luckily lots of other people have those same problems. So I love candles. I'm a candle addict like most people, but I don't know, I'd never smelt one like this, so we had to kind of make it ourselves. And I wanted it to be warm but not overpowering, and we also wanted it to be kind of cozy but spicy at the same time. So we called it African Moss because that was when we came to the final fragrance. It was like a zillion essential oils. I couldn't even name them all, but the main notes would be like geranium, lavender, a hint of bergamot. There's some rosewood in there. And it just gives, I wanted to invoke that feeling of like being in like a mossy forest, and that smell. So it's woody, but it's also fresh and it's warm. Oh, I love it. People get so into the candle, like it's weird. I get really intense DMs, and it makes me so happy every time. They're like, this is insane, please never stop making. And loads of people keep asking us to do, like, do you know, like the giant one, like the huge.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, with the multiple wicks.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I never thought of, okay, we probably should get on that maybe next year. So, again, I think those came about more from, it was just something that we would use personally. It was something I'd kind of mess around with and I'd always have on me. And friends were like, well, why don't you just start selling those? And I don't know, sometimes when you do that, you know, when you're not, I didn't think of it. I thought, oh, it's just something weird that I do. But then I thought actually a lot of people would want to do that. So I use the rollerballs as like a moment. So if I'm stressed, if I'm in my car and I'm stressing out, or I'm in traffic, whatever, and I need to just like ground myself, I would just be like rolling them on, smelling them throughout the day. And it's more of a moment. It's not a lasting perfume because it's 100% natural aromatherapy oils, and they just kind of, they do dissipate after about 10 minutes. But just having that moment of like communion with yourself, do you know what I mean, for me? And I think the fragrances, we wanted them to be reminiscent of that, and that's why we also tied it into the African goddesses, because we wanted to kind of venerate them. Basically, I think it's something it's not spoken about. There's still a big taboo around African spirituality, which is like a gross hangover from colonialism. People think that it's something that you shouldn't talk about or whatever. And I was just like, all these goddesses are so amazing, and quite often I will kind of call on them for certain things personally in my practice, and I was like, I wanted to make the oils and that practice a part of that. So the fragrance families are Yemaya, and she is the queen of the ocean. She's very calming. So that's petitgrain, frankincense, and lang lang. And then we have Ocean. I love this one. This is my favorite one, and that's sensual. So Ocean is like the goddess of fertility and happiness and prosperity, and her color is yellow, and she lives in like rivers. She's often kind of portrayed as a mermaid or somebody knitting at the bottom of the river and making the tide, which I really like. Ooh. So it's sweet orange, jasmine, and lang lang. And then we have Oya, which is grapefruit, juniper, and rosemary. Oya is really uplifting. I love this one. So it's nice as a little set. You can either give them to friends or share them or keep them all to yourself, layer them throughout the day. So yeah.
And what base oil do you use?
We use a marula oil, and it's marula and rice bran mix. So it's actually really moisturizing. So if you're stuck and you don't have your oil or your shea, you can just kind of roll a bunch into your hand and use that as a moisturizer as well, or roll it onto any dry bits. And I love marula oil. I just think it's amazing. It's kind of underrated. Someone sent me a video of like a bunch of animals getting drunk on marula the other day. It was so funny. I was like, I'm going to have to post about this.
But I love that idea of using fragrance in that way, because we always think about it as fragrance is something that, you know, you spray on before you go out the door in the morning and then that's it. But I love, this is making it so intentional and sort of bringing you back to yourself in a way that I think people don't frequently think of using fragrance.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we try and, like all of our products, we try and make it intentional and make it about slowing down. And I always say to people, so many women, particularly in New York and London, were like, I need you to make a liquid version of this oil. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, I don't have 5 minutes to melt it. And I get it, we've all been there, but I'm like, if you don't have 5 minutes, let's have a conversation. What changes are we making? Like, make the 5 minutes, it's not that serious. And I've got into some really weird, like, interesting confrontations, and this is the thing, is like, sometimes having that little 5 minutes or that little community can really lead onto a wider journey. And that's what we really hope is, so many brands are like banding around the idea of self-care, but we really are like, slow down, take your time. Even with like the shea butter, it's not going to sink in immediately because it hasn't been mixed with chemicals that make it sink in immediately. So you're going to have to massage yourself, and whilst you're doing that, hopefully your mind is not focusing on you know what I mean? It's just kind of bringing yourself back and constantly grounding and taking time. That's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I've noticed that a lot of it's absolutely true that everyone's talking about self-care these days, but I do find that many times that self-care is focused on a thing or a ritual that then actually takes you out of yourself. Whereas what you're doing is saying, you know, like, it takes a minute to make this thing liquefy or to make it rub into your skin. So just like sit with yourself for that time.
Yes, and I can get quite confrontational about it, but in a nice way, in a pleasant way. And it has actually, weirdly, a couple of women that came to our workshop, I have had some little emails where they're like, I did make some changes, not just because of the 5 minute oil, but because me being confrontational, being like, why don't you have 5 minutes? It's like, yeah, why don't I?